My parents took my disability checks to buy my sister a car, so I cut them off and watched their lives collapse without me. I'm a 27-year-old guy born with a mild physical disability that made walking difficult, but never stopped me from dreaming. My right leg has limited mobility, so I've lived my life with braces and a careful pace. Still, I've always pushed myself, finished college, landed a remote IT job, and tried to make my own way. But in my house, none of that ever seemed to matter. My parents always treated my accomplishments like participation trophies, while my younger sister, Sarah, could do no wrong. Sarah was the golden child from the moment she could talk. She got brand new phones every year, weekend trips with Mom, and praise for simply existing. If I bought something for myself, even with my own money, Mom would make a face and say, "Maybe you should have saved that instead of wasting it on gadgets." Meanwhile, when Sarah came home with a designer bag she couldn't afford, Dad would beam with pride, saying, "That's my girl. She's got taste." I used to tell myself they didn't mean harm, that maybe, deep down, they just worried about me more because of my condition. But the truth is, they never saw me as capable. Every decision I made was second-guessed. Every milestone I reached was followed by a reminder that Sarah was doing better. When she failed a semester in college, they blamed the stress of trying to be perfect. When I once fell behind on rent, they called me irresponsible. I remember one dinner where Dad proudly told Sarah's boyfriend how lucky he was to have her. Smart, beautiful, ambitious. Then he looked at me and added, "And this one's got a good heart at least." Everyone laughed, even Sarah. I forced a smile, feeling that familiar burn in my chest. I thought enduring their favoritism was the price of family. But I had no idea how far their selfishness would go. Ever since I turned 18, I've received monthly disability checks. Nothing huge, but enough to cover my physical therapy, medications, and mobility gear. My parents insisted I let them handle the money when it first started. "It's just easier for us to manage your bills," my mom said, and I believed her. I was young, naive, and desperate to prove I trusted them. They said family helps each other. I didn't realize that meant they helped themselves first. At first, everything seemed fine. The bills were paid, groceries were bought, and my medical appointments stayed on schedule. But over the years, I started noticing little inconsistencies. My therapy sessions were suddenly too expensive, and Mom told me we needed to skip a month or two to save money. When I checked my account, the numbers didn't add up. Hundreds missing. Then thousands when I'd ask. Dad would brush it off with lines like, "We used it for the house. Son, this roof doesn't fix itself." Or Mom would say, "You eat our food and live here rent-free. Don't act like you're being robbed." The guilt worked every time. I'd sit there, feeling ashamed for even questioning them, even though it was my name on those checks. Still, something in me started to itch, that gnawing sense that they were hiding more than they admitted. I remember overhearing Sarah once laughing on the phone saying, "Don't worry, Mom said the money's handled. We've got it covered." I didn't know what "it" was then. I wish I'd asked. I told myself not to stir up drama, not to accuse my parents without proof. But that uneasy feeling never left. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and it would all become painfully clear the day I heard an unfamiliar engine roar in our driveway. It was a Friday afternoon. When I heard it, the sound of a brand new engine purring outside the house. It didn't sound like our old beat-up sedan or Dad's rusty pickup. It was smoother, louder, confident. I looked out the window, and there it was. A shiny silver car parked in our driveway, sunlight bouncing off its spotless hood like it belonged in a commercial. Sarah was standing beside it, keys dangling in her hand, grinning ear to ear while my parents clapped like she'd just graduated Harvard. I stepped outside, confused. "Whose car is that?" I asked. Sarah rolled her eyes. "Mine, obviously," she said, posing for a selfie with the car behind her. Mom beamed. "Our girl's been working so hard. She deserves something nice." I frowned. "How did you even afford it?" I knew Sarah barely kept her part-time job, constantly calling out sick or quitting whenever she got bored. Dad patted the hood proudly and said, "We figured things out. Family helps each other." That phrase again. Family helps each other. But when I checked my balance that night, my chest went cold. My disability savings account, the one I'd been building for years, was nearly empty, thousands gone. Rent money, therapy funds, my future, all wiped clean. I stared at the screen, scrolling through the withdrawals, every transaction linked to my parents' account. I stormed into their room, shaking. "Where's my money?" Dad looked up from his recliner, annoyed. "Lower your voice. You took it, didn't you?" Mom's voice rose. "Don't you dare accuse us. We're your parents." Sarah, leaning in the doorway, smirked. "Relax, it's just money. You'll get more next month." Her words hit harder than any punch. That night I sat alone in my room, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding in my ears. For the first time I realized they didn't just see me as less. They saw me as useful. The next morning I woke up determined to confront them again. Calmly this time, with proof. I printed the bank statements showing the missing funds, highlighted the transfers, and laid them out on the kitchen table like evidence in a trial. When Mom saw them, she froze for half a second, then forced a smile. "You're misunderstanding, sweetheart. That money went toward the family. We all benefit from it." I pointed to the car keys hanging by the door. "That's not family. That's Sarah's car. My medical funds bought your golden child a joyride." Her face hardened. "Don't you dare call her that. She's done so much for you. She drives you places, doesn't she?" "She's never driven me anywhere," I snapped. "You've used my money to reward her laziness." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough! You think this house runs on air? We feed you, we keep a roof over your head, and you have the nerve to talk about money like you're some victim?" The word victim echoed in my head. I wasn't allowed to feel betrayed. I was supposed to feel grateful. Every time I tried to speak, they twisted it back on me. Sarah even joined in, laughing under her breath. "You're always so dramatic. You should thank Mom and Dad for taking care of you instead of acting like they owe you something." My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, to tell them I wasn't their charity project. But instead, I sat there, silent, because every argument ended the same way, with me doubting my own reality. That night, Mom knocked on my door softly and said, "You'll understand when you have a family of your own." Then she walked away before I could answer. I didn't know it yet, but that was the night I stopped trusting them completely. A few weeks passed. Things went quiet, too quiet. My parents acted as if nothing had happened, and I tried to bury the anger under routine. But one afternoon, while I was at work, my phone buzzed with a call from my doctor's office. The nurse's tone was polite but hesitant. "Hi, we just wanted to confirm you're aware your insurance renewal wasn't completed this year." My stomach dropped. "What? I never got any renewal papers." "That's odd," she said. "They were sent months ago. To your home address." After hanging up, I tore through the mail drawer in the kitchen. Nothing. Bills, junk ads, but no insurance forms. That's when I noticed one envelope, opened, with my name on it but my mother's handwriting scribbled across the top. It was from the insurance office. The renewal papers I never saw. My pulse started racing. I called the clinic back demanding a copy of the paperwork. When they sent it over, I saw my worst fear confirmed. The income section had been filled out by my parents, listing my disability checks as household income under their names. They weren't just stealing money. They were committing fraud. I remember sitting there shaking, every part of me numb. I had trusted them with my future, my health, and they'd used it to fatten their own lifestyle. That's when something inside me broke. The quiet, forgiving version of me died that day. I printed every form, every receipt, every transfer. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to confront them in anger. I was going to prepare. They thought I was helpless. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. After discovering the fraud, my rage burned hot, but beneath it, a colder plan began to form. I realized yelling wouldn't change anything. They'd only twist it again, make me the problem. So I did something I'd never done before. I smiled. I acted calm. I told Mom, "You were right. Maybe I did overreact." Her face softened instantly and she said, "See, I knew you'd come around. Family shouldn't fight over money." Every word made my skin crawl, but I played my part. I needed time. Time to move my direct deposits into a new account. Time to contact my social worker and explain everything. Time to find a place to live. Behind closed doors, I kept my laptop open late into the night, researching disability housing programs, documenting every message, every bank statement, every paper trail. I became invisible in my own house, careful not to let them notice I was preparing to leave. Sarah, on the other hand, made it impossible to forget. Every morning she'd jingle her car keys like a trophy. "You should have seen the look on my friends' faces when I told them my brother helped me get this car," she'd laugh. "You finally did something useful." I wanted to tell her that her precious car was built on stolen therapy money, on my pain, but I bit my tongue. Not yet. Dad started bragging again about how the family's finally getting ahead, while Mom talked about remodeling the kitchen. It was almost impressive how easily they convinced themselves this was normal. But every lie they told just made my silence sharper. I wasn't their burden anymore. I was their ticking clock. They thought I'd accepted their betrayal. In truth, I was counting the days until I'd make them feel what I'd felt my entire life. Powerless. It took 2 months of quiet pretending before the night finally came. The house was silent, the air thick with the smell of Mom's lavender candles, the same ones she always lit when she wanted things to feel peaceful. I waited until the clock hit 2 a.m., when I knew everyone would be asleep. My bag was already packed. Just clothes, documents, my laptop, and the folder of evidence I'd collected. Everything else could stay. It didn't matter anymore. As I stepped into the hallway, my heart raced like I was committing a crime. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like an alarm. I froze when I heard Sarah's car keys rattle on the counter but realized she'd left them there before bed. One last reminder of everything they took. I stared at those keys for a long second, then turned away. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I just wanted distance. When I reached the front door, my hands trembled. For 27 years, this house had been both my home and my prison. I whispered to myself, "You owe them nothing." Then I stepped out into the cool night air, shutting the door behind me for the last time. I drove my old beat-up car to the small apartment the social worker had helped me secure. It wasn't much, peeling paint, thin walls, a leaky faucet, but it was mine. When I finally sat on the mattress, the silence felt different. Not oppressive, peaceful. By morning, my phone was flooded with missed calls and texts. "Mom, where are you? You're scaring me." Dad, "Come home right now, we can talk." Sarah, "Wow. Dramatic much?" I didn't reply. For once, I didn't need to explain myself. I just watched the sun rise through my new window and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The first week after I left was quiet. Too quiet. I expected anger, guilt trips, maybe even a surprise visit. But instead, my parents went silent. It was unsettling, like the calm before a storm. Then, one afternoon, I got a message from Sarah. "Sarah, nice job abandoning Mom and Dad. They're stressed about bills. Hope you're happy." I didn't answer, but her words told me everything I needed to know. The money had stopped flowing. My disability checks, now going straight to my new account, were no longer propping up their lifestyle. The car payments, mortgage, and family expenses they'd been covering with my funds were suddenly their own problem. A week later, Dad called. His tone was different, soft, tired. "Son, your mother's been sick with worry. We could use a little help this month. Just until we figure things out." I stared at the phone, remembering every time they'd told me I was a burden. Every sneer, every time they'd laughed at my independence. "Dad," I said evenly, "I think it's time you figure things out without me." He sighed. "You don't mean that." "I do," I said. "You used me. You stole from me. And now you're just reaping what you planted." He went quiet for a moment before muttering, "Ungrateful," and hanging up. A week later, I heard from a mutual neighbor that they'd fallen behind on payments. Sarah's precious car was repossessed. My parents had started fighting loudly enough that half the street could hear. I didn't celebrate. I didn't laugh. But when I lay down at night, knowing I'd finally broken free of their control, a calm satisfaction settled in. For the first time, they were the ones struggling to survive, and I wasn't the one paying for it. A month passed, and though I was free, peace didn't come easily. Every night I'd lie awake wondering if I'd gone too far. The guilt crept in like a slow leak. These were still my parents, after all. The people who raised me, even if they broke me in the process. I told myself they deserved what was happening, but a part of me still wanted to believe family could be fixed. Then one evening, I drove past my old neighborhood. I told myself I just wanted closure, to see it one last time. But when I turned onto our street, I saw them. The lights in the house were off, the yard overgrown. Sarah's car was gone, replaced by an empty, oil-stained patch. And there, under the flickering porch light, my parents were standing in the driveway, arguing. I parked half a block away and watched through the windshield. Mom's voice carried through the quiet. "You said he'd come back. You said he'd need us," Dad snapped. "He'll come crawling back eventually. He always does." Sarah shouted something from inside and a door slammed. It hit me then. They weren't sad because they missed me. They were angry because they'd lost control. Still, seeing them like that, desperate, hollow, twisted something in my chest. I gripped the steering wheel until my hands ached. For years, I'd dreamed of this moment, but now that it was real, it didn't feel like victory. It just felt heavy. As I drove away, my eyes blurred with tears. I thought about every birthday I'd spent trying to earn their love. Every sacrifice they'd twisted against me. For the first time, I said the words out loud. They don't love me. They never did. And saying it broke something inside me. But it also freed me. That was my rock bottom. Realizing that sometimes family isn't just broken. It's toxic beyond repair. It wasn't long before the truth caught up with them. One morning, I got a call from a social worker handling my case. Her tone was professional but edged with concern. "We need to verify some details," she said. "Your parents have been flagged in an investigation for financial misuse of disability funds." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You mean someone reported them?" She confirmed it was triggered by inconsistencies between the bank records and the insurance documents. The same forged ones I'd found. Apparently, my doctor had noticed something strange and alerted the authorities. They'd already opened a case. I didn't have to file a complaint. My silence had spoken loud enough. When the investigator asked if I could confirm the transactions and mail redirections, I agreed. My hands trembled as I signed the affidavit, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was release. Years of manipulation condensed into a few pages of truth. News spread fast in our small town. My parents' reputation, once spotless and prideful, began to crumble. Neighbors whispered. The church withdrew their involvement in local events, and Sarah's employer temporarily suspended her after hearing about the investigation. Mom tried to call me, her voice frantic on voicemail. "You've got to help us. They're saying terrible things. You know your father didn't mean any harm, but harm doesn't care about intentions. Only consequences." I sat on my couch that night, the glow of my laptop reflecting off the affidavit, feeling a strange emptiness. I thought justice would feel triumphant, but it didn't. It just felt quiet, like I was standing in the wreckage of something that had been rotting for years. Still, part of me knew this was necessary. This was balance. They built their comfort on my suffering. And now, the foundation was finally gone. And their next move would prove just how desperate they'd become. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. I was sitting at my kitchen table working when a knock echoed through my apartment. Sharp, frantic, desperate. I knew before I opened the door who it was. My parents stood there, soaked from the rain, clothes clinging to their bodies. Behind them, Sarah leaned against the wall, arms crossed, mascara streaked down her face. Mom's voice cracked. "Please, we just need to talk." I let them in, not out of kindness, but curiosity. I wanted to see what they'd say now that everything was stripped away. Dad sat down without being invited. "You went too far. he said, his tone trembling between anger and fear. "We're losing the house. Your mother can't sleep. They're dragging our name through the mud." "You dragged yourselves through it," I replied calmly. "All I did was tell the truth." Mom burst into tears. "We made mistakes. We were trying to help the family. You've ruined us." Sarah snapped, "You're so dramatic. You could have handled this quietly instead of humiliating us." I stared at her, then said, "Quietly? Like how you quietly stole my future for your car." She looked away. No one spoke for a long time, just the sound of rain hammering the windows. Finally, I reached into a folder on the table and slid a paper toward them. "This is the official eviction notice," I said. "The mortgage company filed it last week. They gave you a deadline." Mom gasped, covering her mouth. Dad's shoulders slumped. Sarah muttered something under her breath, but no one answered her. "I didn't ruin your lives," I said softly. "You did. I just stopped paying for the illusion." As they left, Mom turned one last time. "You'll regret this someday." I met her eyes and said, "I already regret ever thinking you were my family." The door clicked shut, and the silence that followed felt like the first breath of peace I'd taken in years. It's been 8 months since that day. Sometimes I still wake up expecting to hear my mother calling me for breakfast or my father yelling from the living room. But then I open my eyes to quiet. No tension, no guilt, just the hum of my own space, my own life. My apartment isn't fancy, but it's mine. Every bill, every piece of furniture, every choice, mine. And after years of being told I couldn't stand on my own, I finally proved I could. The investigation wrapped up a few months ago. They were found liable for financial misconduct. The fines hit hard, and the house was auctioned off. Sarah moved in with some friend from work, and last I heard, Mom and Dad are renting a small place outside town. I haven't seen them since the confrontation. They tried calling a few times, but eventually the messages stopped. Until last week, I came home to find an envelope in my mailbox. No return address, but I knew the handwriting instantly. My mother's. Inside was a short note. "We're struggling. You know, we didn't mean to hurt you. Please send some money. You're all we have left." For a moment, I just stared at it. The words used to have power over me. Guilt, obligation, pity. But now they just felt empty. I folded the letter once, then dropped it in the trash. No anger, no tears. Just closure. These days I walk with more confidence. My physical therapy's back on track, and I've made friends who treat me like a person, not a burden. Sometimes I still think about that house and the boy who stayed too long hoping for love that never came. But I'm not him anymore. They taught me that family means obedience. I had to teach myself that family means freedom.